So how's everybody's week? Good. So Patrick Berzai.
Well, now we're not allowed to say anything.
I thought yesterday was Tuesday, so it started off pretty bad.
So Patrick, what are you drinking? What's everybody drinking? I'm drinking Beck's. Tom's drinking water.
It's called it's one of the 6 Point beers. It's new in the grocery store that I go to, so I was like, I'm gonna try it. It's a lager called Alpenflow.
Ooh.
Put it right in front of you so we can see it.
There we go.
There you go.
Kind of sounds like Alpo, which is dog food. Or
Alpenflow. I like lagers. I'm going to check that out. Like the 6 Point's good.
Yeah, I enjoy it.
Sounds like dog food.
I'm drinking an Atlas District Common Lager.
Beck's.
And my follow-up is a Hellbender Red Ale.
Ooh.
I've got Anderson Valley Briny Melon Goza.
Oh.
You say that Goza?
Mm-hmm.
Patrick Dorsey.
Patrick Dorsey is mute is off. I am here.
He's back.
So what are you drinking?
Water.
I think you get three shows where you're drinking water before we throw you off. Is that how it works, Dave Martin?
That's right.
I don't know if marketers drinking water sells as much.
No. Kind of boring.
It is. That doesn't have the same ring to it.
Yeah,
marketers drinking tequila could be fun.
Yeah.
That's how you end up with another Christmas episode.
Yeah. It could only be a half-hour show.
Summer Spectacular. Yeah, that's right. It's a half an hour long. So go ahead.
Didn't you model this after at one point something drinking whiskey? Wasn't there a show?
Yeah, I modeled this show was our video show that we did for a couple of years was modeled after filmmakers drinking bourbon. There were two filmmakers.
How long did those go?
They were long. They were a couple of hours long.
Woo!
Yeah, but a lot of interesting stuff. If you're interested in stuff like that, like, what's it like to be an assistant, director, things like that. And they would shoot. Some of them were, they were shooting commercials. Not a lot of corporate video, but commercials. And then they would be hired on to be crew for like real, creative productions. So one would get hired on to do, an assistant producer. The other guy was mostly a cameraman, so he'd get hired on to be director of photography and things like that. And it was kind of interesting. The one thing that I gained from that show is that the number of moving parts required to put together a feature, anything of any sort of length, even a short, like a 5-minute short, is just monumental. So when you see at the end of a movie, you see all those credits scrolling by, they will tell you they didn't have enough people. It's just a lot of work keeping that all that stuff straight,
I'm sure.
So
that's why I prefer the credits at the end, not at the beginning.
Oh yeah, well they'll like do the stars at the beginning, but you're not going to see who's in charge of casting at the beginning.
The key grip or whatever it is.
That's at the end.
What that was.
That's at the end.
Best boy.
I think
that's different.
I think the Star Wars movies are what changed that. You weren't allowed to do it first. You had to roll the credits. It was like a Hollywood production company. Like the production company was more of a thing back then. You had to do it that way, and he caught a lot of flack for not doing that way, because you remember the first I think all the Star Wars just opened up with a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and you don't know who anybody is. So I think that's what changed it in the first place. Thanks, Star Wars.
I didn't know that.
By the way, I just posted a video that I had done on LinkedIn to in fact, Patrick, Dave, that's the video you were looking at. There's a snippet of that video. It's not. Don't look to Hollywood for your inspiration for corporate videos. And since you mentioned that in the galaxy, far, far away, I've had several customers ask me to do that for their videos. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I had one guy. The best example of that is a sales guy. And by the way, we have to have an episode on like what's the matter with salespeople, and we could do it with this group. I think they're more sales oriented. But so he came to me, and it was back at the time where the PSAs Got Milk were famous, and he proposed that we do a whole series of ads called Got AMS, Association of Management Software. So I said, yeah, we're not going to do that, Jerry. But why not? Well, because it's kind of got milk. You dumb salesman. Anyway, the good ones are good. The bad ones
Got to
are
write it across his upper lip.
Yeah, he should write it. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea. We're going to start with tattoo advertising.
Tattoo-tizing?
Tattoo-tizing. Yeah. Hey.
I know a place where they do that in, and I just made up that word. I don't think that's a word.
It should be, though.
Okay.
It is now.
You know what? You can have it. It's
Really?
yours. Yeah, there you go. And then there's a place called Melt Bar and Grill in Lakewood, Ohio, where if you get Melt tattooed on your body, like their logo, I think you get 40% off for the life. And they've had hundreds of people do this. So, and it's Lakewood, Ohio. It's like a suburb of Cleveland. So there kind of is tattoo-tizing already.
Really?
Yeah, you should check it out. I mean, it's crazy how many people actually do it. Their sandwiches are very good. I will tell you that.
It's worth
40% off. Yep.
Yeah.
I would say so. I don't get tattoos, but if you got a lot, why not?
It's really never too late to start, Patrick. That's what they say.
I say more for everybody else.
Yeah, it is.
I'm being more of a rebel by not getting one. That's my 2 cents.
Agree. Well, you're just barely in the age group, I think, where that's being a rebel.
I'm not sure. It depends on what point of view you have. But yeah, I'm like the end of Gen X. I'm not quite a millennial.
Yeah.
So I could still mock the millennials from a distance. I like to talk about the millennials that mock themselves from inside the millennial cohort. Those people are most hilarious. They're like, oh, we don't do that. Oh, it's so terrible. So it's pretty funny. And never mind.
Frank, what's your opinion of that?
Millennials are the worst.
Oh my goodness, there he is.
See, he knows how to work the audience. I don't know. I mean, there's bad people in every group.
Of course.
Yeah. Better than
Well,
boomers.
thank goodness since you've started recording it, the conversation has become serious.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just lost
Just
you
the
guys.
latest one.
What's up, Ray?
Just another day living the dream, gentlemen.
What are you drinking?
What am I drinking? Wolfsbane from Commonwealth Brewing in Norfolk, Virginia.
Nice.
Ooh.
There you go.
I was in Norfolk for the weekend, and they were open, and we were able to socially distance. They had like all the tables out, but like tents over each table, so you could be separated, and the lines going up to get beer. So
Yeah.
And I went right at opening time because I have a drinking problem, and I wanted to be there, and there was no one there. So there you go.
Score.
Opening time was what, 10 a.m., but you were like, fuck it.
Yeah, fuck it. So I lined up at 9. I said, what's the problem?
Did you think there was going to be a line already?
No, I was kidding.
It's like trying to get to Cedar Point or something like that, like a amusement park. Yeah.
All right. So I was kind of hoping Alex would be here because I think she does a lot of webinars. I saw see if I can even still find it here. Where is it? Just some interesting, I thought interesting facts about webinar, and they make sense to me. The number of marketers, B2B, this is all B2B, marketers who do webinars. Typical webinar is 52 minutes long, for those of you who are interested. Or the average time attendees spend consuming webinars based on a survey. This makes sense to me. 36% of webinars are designed for early stage awareness, 47% middle stage consideration, and only 17% for late stage decisions. So anyway, I just wanted to throw out, has anybody seen anybody doing anything new with webinars, or how has everybody being stuck at home change the way people are doing webinars. And I haven't actually been on a webinar since this happened, I don't think. So what's going on? Anybody have any insight into that? Maybe not.
I think early on, we have a pretty consistent, webinar schedule, 1 or 2 a month that are very hot, more educational, top of the funnel type of, activities, no different than many. And the numbers probably spiked, end of March into, majority of April, like 20 to 30% more, right? And people were staying on them, right? So to your point, like not a lot of drop off, right? So more people were registering, more people were attending. Like we might get 50%, the people that register and attend, but we were up at some of them like 70%. And I think it's because people were just sitting there. Now, are they all, accelerating through the pipeline? No, I think they were very much educational and people were looking for things to do. What was great was they weren't all like what to do with your virtual event, right? They, which might have been like very topical and now has kind of fallen off the cliff. So they were just more AMS or member engagement, analytics type of activity. But now, if I look back over the last 30 to 45 days, it's kind of gone back to that norm from a number standpoint, all the way from registration to attendees.
Have you noticed a change in the content has done that, or you just think it's a general interest in like what people are up to physically?
Content-wise, thematically, they're very similar, right? Different, nothing different. We do kind of our own webinars that would be very AMS, our technology. And then once a month, we try to bring in, some thought leaders. Like we have one coming up in July or July 1st, actually about content curation, right? Then we have Hillary Marsh, who's a speaker. Dave, I think, knows Hillary, and Elizabeth Engel, right, are going to be co-hosting. We bring in like outsiders. So it's a way for us to educate our clients as well as kind of be like, ultimately there's some tie into our technology. So we kind of balance it out. So even when I look at those two themes, the numbers were still up and now they've kind of gone, we typically get a little higher with like the guest speaker. Like if I brought Paul on to talk about content through video, like that's an interest of people because they want to learn like how would that apply to mine. Then we talk about how the AMS might be helping track that data, report on it. But very similar numbers. They went up and now they're kind of leveling off.
I've got a question for the group, just as an observation, that there are an awful lot of people, it seems, well, everybody's doing Zoom, right? But I've been on several events that really were like webinars. I mean, they were on Zoom, but they shared a screen and then they tried to do it like they were doing a presentation. And of course, for the most part, we're not very skilled at it. And I'm just wondering if that's going to impact people's perception of, the value or the quality or something of webinars. It just felt like it's starting to detract from what used to be a unique sort of event, a webinar. You think that's true?
Well, I think part of what's happened is the fact that people that weren't doing webinars before are having the, oh crap, I still need to do something to meet my number, so I better do webinars so I can show my bosses I'm trying. And the quality the quality of them may or may not be as good if you're just doing it as a tactic and not as part of a strategic education and funnel engagement thing. And I think that's the risk I've seen, is that the webinar market is just, it's saturated. I mean, just everyone is doing one.
Yeah, that's
and part of what I was observing is the ones where they were events before. Not necessarily big events, like the county extension service does in-person presentations on gardening or pest control or whatever, and now they're doing it through Zoom presentations, sort of.
Patrick B., you were about to say?
Oh, no, I agree with you. I think that the saturation is what it really is. I think of it how social networks start. You see a lot of organic traffic and it's algorithmic and you think this is always going to last, but then as it gets saturated, what you see actually gets limited. And you know, so I think that's a big part of it. We've made a point to promote our webinars through this. I think we've done like 5 since COVID started. We've changed it, changed our format. They're not lead gen. What we've tried to do is make them conversations. So we try to go thought leadership. And one of the things I talk to all of our guests about, we've had some pretty good guests too, in terms of in our industry, we don't have to have a conclusion. What this is meant to be is a good conversation. And then the only thing I'm really thinking about in widening the focus is like, okay, of all the registrants here, who like is this who the sales team wants to talk to? You know what I mean? It might not always be. So just think about how broad you want to make it. But if it's a topic that concerns them all, you're going to bring them in. So that's what we really do. We try to like hone it around our ideal customer profiles. And so we take a very focused approach. So we haven't seen a drop off, I guess is a long story. I don't know, that's been my feedback. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. The key thing that I think that I've seen and that we've talked about before is the organizations doing more pre-recorded webinars and then having the speakers engage in chat with the attendees. And that experience, I've spoken twice now doing that, and I've attended a couple as well. It's more engaging. It's more interesting than sitting there while somebody drones on, you know, for the whole time, because there's this chat. Can be a little bit distracting, but you know, there's also people, just attendees chatting amongst themselves, as well as the speakers answering questions or comments and things like that. And that to me is kind of an interesting way, not only from the technological side of production and producing it without the speaker screwing up or their internet going down, like Dave, you know, kicking out the router plug. Poor Ray had to deal with that, but you know, but also just the engagement from the speakers being able to engage with the attendees, and that it creates a different environment. That's the key thing.
Let me understand what you're saying. You're saying that the webinar, the presentation part is pre-recorded.
Yeah.
But then the speaker is there with the attendees during the event.
During the event in the chat.
I've not done that. I've not seen
answering
that.
questions in real time.
Well, Frank, you were trying to talk me into something like that, were you not? Like we do a webinar and we'll just run on a regular basis?
Oh yeah, kind of like, I don't know if this would work now with people's expectations of webinars, but yeah, the idea of having like an evergreen webinar that would just, you know, run every day at 1 or 2 or 3 time slots. But that was more the other direction actually, where like you wouldn't really have to engage with it at all.
I mean, that'd be a good example of an on-demand where you just have it behind a lead gen form.
Yeah.
Right.
You fill out the form and you click repeat. But
yeah, it's like on demand with like the fake benefit of it being like an exclusive, you know, time sensitive.
So the speaker is on chat, distracting other people from his own webinar. At least he's not showing, or not someone else isn't showing him up.
I don't know Patrick to see through it right away.
It gets super meta. No, but that's actually
But people love it.
Yeah,
the attendees really enjoy it. There's a lot of engagement happening.
Never would have thought of that on my own. So thanks.
Yeah.
That's why I come to this. Yeah. You can learn something.
Yeah, there's a company in the association space called Matchbox Virtual Media that's all they do.
Huh.
What do they do it for? They
did it for MMC.
Didn't they do it for MMC?
They didn't do the technology part of the marketing membership conference.
No, but they did all the recordings.
Yes.
And then Blue Sky did the technology part on the Path LMS.
Yeah, exactly.
It seemed to be as people transitioned to these virtual events, that was the first kind of wave, right? The pre-recorded, you know, and then they had, as Dave mentioned, like the kind of engaging chat. And I guess I haven't been on a larger event type conference to see if that's kind of pivoted as some of the newer technologies come out. But that seemed to be in early April. That seemed to be what everybody was doing.
I think the challenge of what I've seen is like people that are used to speaking at conferences, like they're just mentally trained to, I'm going to put together a presentation. I'm going to talk to the presentation, and that's what I'm going to do. So there's 2 opportunities within that. Do you simply stay on script and go? like webinars I've done, I'm willing to completely go off script and just stay within the hour. Like, you have a question, throw it up. I'm here to talk about this subject. Let's go. If it's a tangent and I pull other stuff up, then it's kind of the way I go when I'm doing webinars like that. Another technique that we've been doing, Chris Yoko, the Yoko of Yoko CO, we've been doing a series of webinars that are more of like this, where Chris brings on an expert, and it's more of like a mastermind talk of like so on and so forth in an interview with access to that kind of thought leader. And that's been really engaging. We've had some really good engagement around people signing up and then staying through to the end to have these discussions from speakers. Like, we did one last week with Kevin Manny, who runs he's an author and on design thinking. And I'm brain farting on a couple of the other ones, but some good stuff that by virtue of our client roster, we can bring to share education with our other clients as well.
So is that limited participation because it's a mastermind kind of concept, or?
No. I mean, I'm just using that as an example as a mastermind type, like inspirational. I mean, like for example, our upcoming one is Mark Kibble from American Ceramic Society, who in a span of 4 months did an AMS, CMS, LMS implementation and moved offices and lived to talk about it.
Wow.
Without a drinking problem.
Man.
We're going to talk to him about like, how do you manage that and what's it like? And Chris is just going to have a conversation. There might be slides, there might not be. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah. How do you build that? I mean, how do you control people's expectations around that? I mean, if I were to, I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud here. If I wanted to show up, we're going to have this expert talk about this particular topic. I kind of expect, I expect him or her to impart
Some
knowledge and some structure, not just an open ask me anything, even though ask me anything kind of things might be more productive. So do you have a problem controlling that, or?
Go ahead, Tom.
Seems like the same dynamic that you have in sessions at conferences. To what degree do you try to get through material that you've presented versus follow the tangents or discussions that come up? I mean, it's a balancing act. But it's a lot more interesting, I know, in the in-person discussions and presentations, if you do at least some of that.
Yeah.
If you do too much of it, people afterwards say, well, I was hoping to hear more from, what you had prepared to tell us, et cetera, et cetera. So it is balancing.
I mean, how much do you think the medium is the message of the not in person versus the in person? We kind of always come back to themes around that, right? But like, there is a certain way it translates, but not always. So.
Yeah, I think webinars are kind of to me, they sort of make the assumption that they're doing a model that was perfected in person.
Mm-hmm.
And they haven't really transcended that very much yet.
I mean, that's what we're certainly trying, but we're trying to figure that out too. We talked about the one obvious thing, I think, before in a call is, the person who hangs back in the meeting with the other person who hangs back in the meeting, and a deal's done that way. Like, that's always the thing that we'll be missing, of course. But
Right.
I find the conversations work better than the presentation in webinars. That's where we've gone.
Yeah.
A bit more spontaneous.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wonder that necessarily means that the presentations are different, and so, fewer words, more pictures, I would imagine. React to this.
That's what we try to do. We kind of frame it up. It's like, oh, we've seen X with our original data. A lot of people have their own original data. What have you seen, expert in your field, kind of thing. And maybe we'll throw in some like third-party data too. So we want to highlight all those things. And it usually comes with something that people feel free to talk about. Some of the people we have, though, are restricted on what they can talk about. That's one thing to think about. Like, they can't just totally be themselves. We did get them because they're build, like, usually we're buying companies, not necessarily thought leaders. You know what I mean? So like in my world, like ad agencies were one of our things. So if someone comes from MediaCom, we have to they have to abide by rules. I used to work there. I knew I couldn't say stuff. You know what I mean? So they can't be too but we're buying MediaCom. So people are like, oh, I'm going to come watch this person on MediaCom knows what they're like, director of innovation. I'll listen to what they have to say. So that's really what it is. It's like brand names, conversations, and we're getting pretty good leads around there. Our deal sizes are going up around our webinars.
Really, that's very encouraging. Yeah.
And at what stage of the funnel are your webinars? Are they?
We can catch a lot of people, and what it does is it makes us look more like. So one of the things my company lacks right now is like narrative and direction. And not to get too into this, but it makes it seem like we're about something more than just making that money. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of these people are, although we are, but a lot of these people are. I don't want that to go away. But they buy on brand too, and that's what helps. So it's sort of the funnel that they decide they're in on. So a lot of people are aware of us, but a lot of the people we have a lot of ComScore, like top whatever people, but of the ones that don't, like they know who we are, they just haven't considered us. So this is one of those things that's making them consider us. So we're seeing those people kind of come through, and then whatever our salespeople do with them, we're a pretty good sales team. So that's really what they're for us. They kind of define their own place in the funnel, not to be vague, but it's all over. Good conversation with a lot of good people. You figure they understand your industry. That kind of seals them in to what they want to do. Like we've just recently gone into getting a lot of like religious organizations, and they actually care. We did some research. They care that you have their values. We just don't talk about those kinds of things because some of our other like our news networks, if they found out we had religious organizations, they'd quit us or they'd start a social media storm. And some of our news networks are like conservative news networks. When one of our employees found out that we had one of the networks, he almost quit. You know what I mean? So it's a little unique. So we have to be like really careful with that stuff. But so when we keep it kind of above the fray and like we're the platform for anyone, not anyone, but you know what I mean? We're able to hone that too. That's how we kind of can get more people to think, oh, they're not that good. So they see themselves with us, not like us with other people.
So this is still on the webinars thing, but a little bit different. What are you guys doing as far as like automating the webinar marketing process? Because so often within organizations, people will use Zoom or GoToWebinar, and people are registering on GoToWebinar, and then the marketing manager has to go to webinar, download the people that have registered. Maybe it's for follow-up afterwards to send them the recorded version or whatever, and then take that CSV, upload it into their email platform or marketing automation platform, and then sending them out the email. And it's just not connected. To what degree are you guys connecting that from the webinar soup to nuts, whether it's the couple emails that go out beforehand to get people to register, the actual registration, are you doing it are you connecting, for example, Marketo to GoToWebinar, and therefore you're just passing data over to GoToWebinar and the actual registration's happening in a form in Marketo? And then afterwards, do you see who attended, the data comes back, who attended, who didn't attend, and then sending out different emails to us and having that whole process automated?
Feeling a lot of angst in that question, by the way. Just
Yeah.
You're feeling a lot of angst?
I'm getting angst in that. Just the way you went on and on with each step. Like you
want an answer. This isn't a hypothetical question.
No, I'm curious because
But before we give Dave the answer, I just want to assure you, Dave, everything's going to be okay. Okay, proceed with answers if you have them.
Or
maybe
not.
You sound like someone who just started using Marketo.
6 months ago.
Yeah, we do it all through Marketo. Marketo and Zoom is how we do it. We pass the data, and there's rules. I have someone help me with those things, but there's a logic to it where people who didn't do one behavior and did do it, it knows how to track it all. I can't say to the ad, the implementation, that's not my strong suit. So there could be something there that is not like from the ops perspective, but that's how we do it, is through Marketo.
HubSpot and Zoom. Landing page in HubSpot, trigger the email campaign, send it out, and you're into the campaign and follow through. Pass the data.
So are they registering in HubSpot because HubSpot has a native integration?
Well, we're keeping it even lighter. We're just doing a plain HubSpot form and just sending it as a HubSpot email. Well, here's the link and here's the information. Add this to your calendar, go there, and it's just embedded. And when they come in, because at this point everyone has a Zoom account, when they come in, you're gonna see who they are, and you can capture that data later on. So that at least takes 3 to 4 of the CSVs and merges out of the equation, just captured at the end of the webinar.
And do you guys do paid promotion around your webinars or no?
We do not. We do have clients that do, but we don't. I mean, depending on whether or not they want to track that as a campaign. I mean, now you're passing UTM codes into the HubSpot form and stuff like that. But
one thing I learned that also helps, we do this for webinars we really want people to come to, is a little banner on the top of our website. That's driven a lot. We get a ton of traffic to our website. And so we get a lot of people coming in that way, some accidental clients.
It's like a scrolling banner?
No, just one at the very, very top. If we have something that's interesting, it's right above the nav. That drew, like in our last webinar, I think that was like 55 people that we had come in that way. It was probably like a third of our audience that actually came in for that webinar. That one was more of a tutorial as well. So that could be part of it. Like they came to the website to try to find something and then they saw that. So we're not completely sure about, intent. So you have to look at that. But that's a little thing. And then if you have dashboards, we advertise on our dashboards. So you have a video platform and we put a lot of ads there. So if there's anything you have like that, those people are most prone. But also think about the what you have to talk about. A lot of those people in our dashboards are developers. Some are editors. We can kind of tell the difference. But we're not even very good at targeting our own network in terms of that. Like we should know who's who, but there's no like way to toggle. But I always find that's a really cheap and easy way. And we get leads from people who are using it, our platform or our player, and then they'll upgrade to the platform based on that. So it's like a stream that we do too, advertise that way.
Yeah, and we are integrated with GoToWebinar and have a whole program set up and all that. So I was just curious of what other people were doing. There's not too much angst.
Does GoToWebinar work well with Marketo?
Yeah, there's a connector, but we just signed an enterprise wide contract for Zoom webinar, so I've got to figure that out. And there's not an out-of-box connector. I just got to set it up.
Yeah, it works pretty well though. When you're there, you'll like it.
Yeah, cool.
So our next question is, what data best informs the customer journey? Dave, I think that I was just trying to encapsulate what you and I had talked about. You might want to put a finer point on that. But Amanda Kaiser, who couldn't be with us today, her 2 cents. When I think of the data that best informs the customer journey, I go to qualitative conversational data. That way we get the why people think the way they do and behave the way they do. So, but Dave, you were actually thinking about like different stages. Were you not, or what were you thinking?
It wasn't probably as much, I guess it's data. I mean, there's the membership lifecycle or customer lifecycle, whichever one you want to call it, and the stages within it. It's a little bit different for membership than it is for, a for-profit.
Yeah.
But, and then there's the methodology, like we've got awareness, recruitment, engagement, retention, and reinstatement, right? And that covers all, whether you're non-member, we're trying to get you to become a member, all the way through to, if we lost you and we're trying to get you back. But then within that, we're setting up, we had an initial model that was set up in Marketo for us by an agency that helped us get everything set up in Marketo. And it wasn't very good. It's not really working. So 6 months in, we're like, we got to change this. And we're making it reflect more of a membership organization than it had before. But it's that the methodology is one part of it, and those stages of a flywheel kind of cycle. But then there's the data and the, are you MQLs, SQLs, leads, and then for non-members, and then for members, we're looking at like in unengaged, engaged, and advocates, and trying to put data around that and visualize it differently, and something that we've never done as an organization before. So I was just bringing that up before. Like, I'm just curious what other people think and what their experiences are.
Well, I think the one thing that that I suggest is that you need some sort of satisfaction data one way or the other. That would be helpful, especially for the association model where you're constantly trying to renew and engage people. So whether that be Net Promoter, and Tom can go on and on about the virtues of Net Promoter, or the lack thereof.
Or not.
Yeah, and but that would be something that I think would be helpful.
Do you, so this is a lot of email data, right? Like you're emailing a lot of these people in these associations. Is that correct?
I think in Dave's
Well,
case,
I
yeah.
mean, the lead scoring model that's going to be behind it is going to be based on all different types of digital engagement.
Okay. One thing we're going to start doing is, so I'm a search marketer. The data is really language data. So like analyzing the subject lines of the emails, that'd be one place I would start, and understanding based on those words. So it usually, like, to do it, you have to kind of sort in terms of your Excel. But like if you always kept track of what those subject lines are and then behaviors against those subject lines, then I think you'll find a better way to think about how, so, you know, one person, say if they left, it would be sorry we missed you, or like whatever. But you'll notice a lot of sorry emails to people who tend to be leaving. You know, so some of it's going to be influenced by what you're already doing, but then other things could be influenced by like, oh, when we use this word, we tend to get more people opening the email. Or
Yeah.
when we use this word. And then I would recommend just looking at the subject lines first, and then, you know, obviously getting more complex than that's difficult in terms of analyzing your full email. If there's anything out there that can do that. But what you'll be able to do is just like pull your subject lines into an Excel and start and then add the open rates and all that sort of stuff to those subject lines and start to see which words start to work better. Because again, that's what you're supposed to be doing. I think a lot of times these scoring models or whatever they are, they're based on behavior that's not necessarily connected to what someone's doing. It's on an assumption of looking at it from the pipeline perspective, but the flywheel perspective kind of changes the dynamic there. You know what I mean? So if you're thinking about it from that consumer perspective with these words, you're going to get a better auger of who's leaving, rather than, oh, you know, we just send these people this email because like we need money from them, or we send these people this email to make them aware of this thing. And, you know, you think about it from your perspective. So I think like that's the big thing, is orienting around the language that is being acted on. And then that's what you do. The only other thing I would say though, is if you have search volume that comes from it, you might want to think, just because it didn't act on the email, if I'm sending this out at volume, am I getting traffic on certain keywords after I send these emails out? Does the traffic in the email, are they, like the words, are they the same? You know, so then you'll start to understand the campaign from the mind of the consumer. I know we talked about this a little bit last time, but if you can say like, oh, I sent an email out about, you know, membership, and I'm noticing like, oh, brand plus membership keywords are up, you know, that's how you kind of judge how everything worked. But that's what I would mention, tossing into your analysis of the subject lines of the keywords, because not everyone's going to click on the email. We know the emails are, or whatever you do here. But what you're doing is really, you're grading it on language and analysis of language, not necessarily grading it on certain behaviors, which obviously you can layer over top. But I'd leave it right there if anyone else has anything they want to add. But that's how I try to measure that stuff.
Very interesting. Frank, we ought to do more of that.
Yeah.
Why don't you take care of that and give me a call next week and see how you're doing?
The
Well,
hardest
it's
part
kind
is
of like
cataloging it all.
sentiment. Is it sentiment analysis that you can that you see with? There's some AI tools that'll kind of, you upload all of your all your email data, including subject lines, and they start going through and say, hey, your members, if you have like 1,000 emails, your members are reacting to positive subject lines, not negative subject lines, or that include these keywords, that type of thing.
Sentiment stuff's kind of tough. I've seen it work and I've seen it not work. I've mostly seen it not work. Part of why it doesn't work is because a lot of the sentiment we're doing is on Twitter, and Twitter's all about sarcasm. So it's kind of dead. You know what I mean? It's like you're not even feeding it good data, you know? But that's why I like keywords.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. With keywords, you can, like, that's your image into their brain. You know, that's the word they're thinking, or that's the word that triggered them. So that's what I like about it. And then you can infer sentiment from there. And what you can do is add modifiers. You know what I mean? So, you know, for instance, like think about targeting for contextual. So for COVID, nobody wanted to advertise on that, you know, but if it was like tips for dealing with COVID, you know, you think about the full like what's going on, but it's that tips is the active thing. You understand? That's what I'm trying to understand, like a practical Like, so you can't just look at one word and think. You have to be like, all right, let's look at, you know, combinations, like roots of words is what you, which is what you do in search. So just starting to connect that language together, it's not even that complex. You'll start to see that, okay, this works because we got these other behaviors. And so that's what you're really doing is like, all right, so they saw this email, they didn't like it because they didn't act on it. The email sucked, but really you saw search volume go up at the same time. So did the email suck? You know, but it has to be around the words that you can connect. And that's how you know.
And how do you measure that connection, Patrick?
So it's, I mean, it's like, it's a casual relationship. So the first thing you have to do is have enough of a certain kind of data to interrupt what you normally have. So, you know, but think of it as a burst. So a lot of times what we did for this one brand we had, it was a cosmetic brand. We didn't have a lot of budget. We bursted YouTube impressions and we bursted social impressions around a kind of lipstick. People didn't really act on the ad very much because it was a new thing to market. But then we saw, okay, when we put those impressions in market, we saw search volume go up for brand. The brand is Revlon. And then search volume go up for like brand plus lipstick. So we're like, look, we're having some sort of impact. Now what they were trying to measure is consideration. So we're like, all right, going from seeing something to doing something. Like that's what we sort of defined as consideration. So that's how we did it. You know what I mean? So
you probably need volume though, right?
Exactly.
For that?
So I don't know what kind of volume you can get, but most people can do more volume than they're used to, right? So you think, okay, what's my reason for talking to everybody? You know, and then you see if that volume has an impact, and then from there you'll probably try to understand it. And if you always want your search brand volume to go up. So if your brand volume is going up, or if they're looking for you specifically after you put stuff in market, that means that you've transferred whatever you wanted to tell them into the brand, and now they're looking for you by brand, which is a powerful thing if you really think about it.
Yeah.
But that's one thing you'd want to measure.
Very cool. Any other thoughts on this subject? We got one more topic left. 7 minutes in which to cover it. And that is, I did an interview today with my summer intern. And she asked me, what's the best way to prepare for a job in digital marketing while I'm still in school? Now, Amanda once again weighed in on this one. She says the best way to prepare for digital marketing is to do digital marketing.
Yep.
I used to work at the National Association of Colleges and Employers. Our benchmarking study showed that grads found summer internships far outpaced those with internships in money and offers for every field. Good job on the internship. Oh, good job on the internship. Okay. Also, to get more experience, join a group that you can care about and see if you can volunteer for the committee that does digital marketing. It's one of those fields where hands-on experience will help you look great to future employers. So my answer to her was to, learn to read and write and think straight and solve problems. And especially in digital marketing, because when you're in college, you're probably not going to be any good at one of the sub-disciplines in digital marketing. That comes after you're on the job for a while. So I'm a big fan of liberal arts educations and people who can think and write straight and things like that. So, but you do need to have I told 90% of success is showing up. So any opportunity you get to participate in things like Amanda's talking about. But I was curious. I thought I'd ask this question for her and see what you guys think.
I've been amazed at the number of interns I've had throughout the years and college students I've spoken to. And you can see the ones that said, I'm going to do whatever the F it takes to get some experience and do this. And those are the ones that come out and boom, they've got jobs. And it's, okay, I'm going to build a website. I'm going to do, even if it's just, I'm going to do email marketing for my fraternity or sorority or a nonprofit I volunteer with. I'm going to create a MailChimp account. I'm going to get in there. I'm going to write some copy. I'm going to build a flyer. So like getting in there and just doing it, doing marketing. Amanda's right. Doing marketing for anything. Everything needs marketing now. Just do it for something and build that experience and use the tools and get out there and do that. And don't just sit in the theoretical ivory tower of, oh, here's the 4 Ps and blah, 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 blah. I was blown away. I interviewed my neighbor's friend of mine, lives down the road. His son is a sophomore at Syracuse. And has been unable to get an internship, and he called me and I was interviewing. I was like, so what kind of marketing classes have you had? He goes, oh, I haven't. I'm like, so first of all, I'm in Virginia, so that's an out-of-state tuition to Syracuse for marketing, and he's got zero marketing experience. I'm like, have you taken a website class or learned? No, I haven't done that. I'm like,
Well, if he did, he wouldn't answer that way. What?
I was like, oh my God, like just do so. And his parents have a pediatric, like both his parents are doctors, and his mom's office is going to be moving locations this summer. I said, great, go to your mom and say, Mom, I want to handle all the communications on your office move. Put together a plan, send out the emails, do that. Just, that's your internship. Do that. And I think, and I see, and I've had interns come in and I'm like, okay, great. Can you write? Can you put some case studies together? And they do that. And those are the ones that go on and they come like, I get the phone call a year later. Are you willing to be a reference for this intern? And go and do that. It's just do it. Not that I have an opinion about that. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean,
It's gonna be all right, Ray. It's going to be
it
all right.
really is like, I agree with what you guys have said. It really is a soft skills. It's an attitude.
Yeah.
But then there also is an aptitude. Like you have to know how to ask questions in ways that don't waste time. And you also have to know when to solve the problem yourself and try to, but give up at the right time and then ask the question when you realize, so how does that work? How do you work with a manager? I would say is a big part of this. How do you view mentors, things like that? And also, I actually work with this charity called Co-op. And what they do is they help sort of underemployed people find digital and like analytics jobs. And so we work a lot on interviews. Interviewing is a big thing because that's a big differentiator. So, I mean, she got the internship, but if she really wants a job, the way you interview is going to be very, very important. But that's like half of getting it. But it's mostly attitude. I would say it's attitude for the most part. I would downgrade from what you said, Paul. It's 80% is showing up, but maybe I have higher standards. You said 90.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say like I always encourage people to be curious. Too often, someone says, "Okay, yeah, I'm studying this," but I'm like, "Well, are you reading industry thought leaders, blogs, watching videos, all that kind of stuff?" So, be consuming content. So when you show up, at least it's not that hard to do, right? And especially if you get Dave's digital marketing newsletter every day. You're going to be ready.
Now there's a marketer right
There
There
it
you go.
is.
Subtle plug.
So that's number one. Number two is embrace technology. Too often people, even if you're not like that kind of Sudoku kind of person, and you got to find a way to understand how technology works and how the technology can connect. And too often you see people that get into the liberal arts education is great, but if you get into Marketo, for example, and you, after 3 weeks, are still really struggling hard to do one basic little thing, maybe it's not the right future for you in marketing because there's a lot of technology behind the scenes to make the shit happen, right? So you got to be comfortable with that. So maybe make that decision. Can I handle technology or not? Especially when you're in the bottom floor, you're doing everything. Including learning HTML.
Yeah,
I was going to bring that up.
Back to the
Yeah, that was coming.
Bring it up.
I was
There you go.
waiting for that. There we
There you
go.
go.
Learn HTML for God's sake and CSS. And the last thing I'd say is embrace analytics. Like understand how to look at trends. You don't have to know calculus. You just know how to look at data and be able to really quickly summarize it and present it. So
two things on that. So one, we have an acronym we introduced at work, and actually comes from my coworker whose husband is a colonel in the Army, and she's constantly moving. And there's a saying among Army wives, FITFO. Figure it the fuck out.
Yeah.
And I think for people coming in, it's like you just got to jump in and figure it out. And that's that attitude of like, to fake it till you make it. And to your point about understanding analytics, there's a great podcast from Freakonomics talking about math skills and how high school kids are coming out. Like they know how to do calculus, but they can't analyze data trends. And that is another big piece. And coming out of liberal arts education, if you can't look at data trends and look at that,
I really like the
you're gonna be a
emphasis
barista.
I really like the emphasis everybody's putting on attitude and approach, curiosity.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a field, you have to have some basic skills and orientations. I'm not sure everybody can learn to think in analytics and all of that. So you have to have some of those capabilities. But this is a field that 2 years from now is going to be completely different.
Yeah.
And 2 years ago it was completely different.
Totally different.
And if you're not only comfortable with that, but you embrace that sort of thing, but you've got to be that way in order to be successful in this field, I think. And you have to be able to see bigger pictures, like what Patrick was talking about, of, you know, seeing the impact of this on a brand, and then seeing people starting to use brand as the word instead of the lipstick or whatever it might be. You got to have a mindset for that.
I think for successful marketers, Tom, there's an ability among all the most successful marketers I know, all people on this call, as many others, have the ability to be down in the weeds, writing HTML, Dave, and looking at the data, but also zoom back up and look at the trends,
right.
make it see where they're going, and come back down to the weeds and get going. That is a unique skill set that I see among the best marketers out there.
Yeah.
And being able to have that view and that ability to do that, people that are stuck at either level, just they peter out.
But from an internship, though, sorry. I was just saying, from an internship, we have to think about, like, right, she's in college, and at some point, like, some of the key things we said, like getting to that point where he or she could add value, and we're going to teach them about data analytics and things. That there's some of those skills, like Patrick mentioned, the ability to interview, that's critical, right? Like, and if we're all interviewing someone or a summer intern, really we're trying to figure out, you know, how they think, right? And is this someone that can apply? I mean, and, you know, Paul and I would say that's liberal arts, right? How do you think and how do you communicate? But, like, it could be as very simple as, like, what's one of your favorite campaigns and why, right? And see if they can articulate, like, how it hit, like, a different emotional level. Maybe how it, like, kind of tried to drive the sale. And if they're thinking like that as an intern, we know then we can take them and say, like, you figure it out, you know, you put something, you go here and do this project, right? And own something. But I want to learn more about what their thought process is, and then try to then figure out, is this a good space for them? Because we're going to teach them some of the harder skills, if you will, or they're going to learn that in time, you know, and then I think Dave said it, the curiosity point, right? Someone that comes to me and says, like, well, I downloaded a couple TED Talks, right? Or I took a $9.95 course on Udemy. Is it Udemy, like the kind of learning platform, you know? And if they've kind of taken that initiative, again, that goes into their thought process. You know, I want to learn more. I'm curious. So I know I'm going to jump into this internship job, and then, like, the world's their oyster, right? Because they'll get in that ground floor. They might say, like, I don't like digital marketing, but I might want to be a copywriter, right?
Yeah.
I might want to go work at a big Y&R in a big agency. But they had to get in there, and how did they get in there? Their curiosity, their ability to interview, right? And, you know, maybe their connections, how to network. You know, those are, like, the things I want to, if you will, arm my interns with, so that they go out there and be wildly successful and hire me 10 years later.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I
points.
found, like, some of the best interviews I have with people, whether they're right out of college or have been a couple years in, turn into conversations, and they're not interviews. And so, like, you're almost two marketers having a conversation. Now, I might have more experience than this person, but it's a conversation. The other thing I would say too, Patrick, is I've given people a funnel. I've drawn a funnel in an interview room on one of those easels, you know, with the paper on it. And I said, you got 100 people at the top, and you got, you know, X number going through each of the stages of the funnel. Ask them to tell me what are the conversion rates between the funnel. So my wife's yelling down the stairs to me. I've got my aunt and uncle's 60th anniversary party right after this, so I'm glad I'm on the second here. To be honest. But, yeah.
Cool. Wow.
Yeah,
so
the one skill that I will not teach, and I can't teach, and I'm not in a position to teach, is the ability to write. So when I
Yeah.
was back at Personify and hiring people left and right, I would say, here's a laptop. You've looked at our website. I need you to write me an email about why I should buy this software. And that just rules people out. And I'm so happy to get rid of those people, because that's going to be a freaking nightmare.
Mess. Yes.
Yeah, down the road, and they can't communicate, interoffice memos, nothing. And so that's the basis for everything we do, I think, in other fields as well.
You could be missing out on somebody who's got just a sick emoji game, though.
Yeah. Hey.
I was short-sighted there, Patrick.
I gotta go, guys. I'll see you
right,
later.
Dave.
Later,
Have
Dave.
fun, Dave.
Thanks.
I actually find the challenge with that, Paul, is the fact that they don't teach real writing in college anymore. Like the writing I see from college students, it's not writing of what we do as far as marketing and emails and stuff like that. They teach. God, I don't even know what to call it. It's just a typical like run-on paragraphs and formatting and stuff like that. There's no the headlines, the writing a good subject line email. Like if they could just teach marketing writing as a course, I'd be grateful. But
there's apps for that. There's Grammarly, and then the Hemingway app. I'm serious, you can get it. It's cheap, and that might help them out because it lights up their words and says, "Try to say this way." I've given it to my millennial and now Gen Z. Gen Z yet? No, maybe not. Employees, and they've appreciated it. Sometimes, and the other thing too is like, all right, is that an email? If it's that long where you're thinking about this, pick up the phone. You know what I mean? Like
that's a great point.
Yeah, like what are you doing?
Just call me. I got lost at paragraph 3.
Yeah, and that's usually where I tell a story. Like, okay, when I was younger, I one time broke up over email. And it was like, oh, how stupid is that? You know, it's like, well, this is more serious. You better get this right. And then so, you know, it's easy to kind of go like, oh yeah, give them a call. Maybe try that. You know, because
this intern of ours writes very well, and she wrote very well in contacting me and in following up. She was not aggressive is the wrong word, but she was on top of it, following up, and but could write. So Ray, I don't know what to say to that. I mean, I just can't hire somebody who can't write. I mean, I was telling my intern today when she was doing this interview, I said, you know, I had an open door policy that I would edit anyone's writing, but every now and then there would be people would write things, and it was usually either engineers or salespeople where I just have to turn it back and say, I have no idea what you're trying to say. I don't even know where to start, so I don't know what to correct. Now I've read enough people's writing to know, you know, people like to get into jargon. My favorite piece of salesperson jargon. Let me think. Second here, the robustness of our extensibility, or the extensibility of our robustness. That was it. That was my favorite.
Paul, did anyone ever come into an interview and you gave them the website test and they're like, I don't even know where to start. What do you guys do?
Yeah, no, I've never had that. That's
I would actually fail the website test. I don't think I do very well. I don't do very well with like when you try to learn a company when you come aboard. A lot of times the website, I'm like, I am lost. But then when you look at the analytics, you're like, oh, this is what you want these people to do. I don't know what it is.
If you turned in a concise critique of my website, that would do.
Here's why your website sucked. The website in crayon. Yeah, you're like, oh, you're hired.
Now, the good intern would probably say, you want me to write an email. What is the output? What are you expecting to happen as a result of this? What's the action? I mean, challenge you back.
Right. Anyway, she asked me that question today. I thought I'd turn it out to the group. I'll show her this video, and I'm sure she'll appreciate it. She's doing a great job for us, and we're happy to have her. And she will go back to college if they ever have classes again, having a pretty good idea how to manage a social media program, you know. And next year she needs to get into some other agency that does something else. So
something else.
Something I didn't notice. Do you have a monkey on your shoulder?
I thought we covered all this. I've got
I
several.
apologize. I missed this part. Okay.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh, I never really noticed to pronounce. It was like you got a monkey on your back. That was too
Yeah.
easy.
Oh yeah.
But,
I
I guess I'm a late comer to that joke. But I was like, oh, it's never been that perfectly in frame.
Yeah. So I've got this thing about monkeys. In case you haven't heard this, I like the fact that people think of monkeys. Poor Frank's rolling his eyes. He's heard this 1,000 times. I like the fact that people think that monkeys are little humans, and you can dress them up in little sailor suits, and they will in fact eat your face. So given the slightest option,
Yeah.
I like
they're
that.
not very nice.
They're
You
not-
like that?
I like the fact that people are stupid enough to
Oh,
go
okay.
down that path.
I thought you were. Oh, and this is still recording, by the way. I thought that like you were sort of empathizing with a monkey and felt a little bit of monkey inside you in terms of saying that. Like, and that's what I was
No.
sort of. So you don't. Okay, it's not like
So he's
you,
not going to eat any faces off, is what you're saying.
not that far,
Yeah,
but like,
yeah.
Only the interns that don't know how to write.
Yeah, right.
Or-
Like, what if rabbits wanted to change their reputation one day? And it's like, oh yeah, we're tired of being thought of as the nice bunnies. You know, we're changing everything.
I will say that when I have Zoom calls with customers, the monkeys go on the floor.
Oh, okay, all
The
right.
duration of the call, so I don't have to explain this to them. But yeah, I mean, if you Google monkey attack, you will find just pages of people
You know what? I'm disappointed. What makes you think I haven't already?
yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. So
And
next
better
week,
yet, it will be branded Thoughtcast Media Monkey Attack.
Yeah, right.
And he's showing up in the analytics.
Yeah, right. Oh, I see what happened there. They had a webinar.
Buy us or else.
so next week, everyone come prepared with your favorite monkey story, and we'll start with that if you dare.
I just learned my favorite monkey story.
There you go. I've got hundreds of them. Anyway, thanks guys. This is really good. My intern will be very happy to have your input, your sage advice, and this was good stuff. And we'll meet again next week.
We can do a personalized message. What's your intern's first name?
Oh, her name is Brooke. So yeah, if we could do that.
I hope that helps, Brooke.
Good luck, Brooke.
Good luck, Brooke. That's all I got.
Personalization.
Feels sort of silly keeping that going, don't you?
If you were drinking anything other than water, you would have chimed in, Tom. What's the matter with you? Brooke is great.
True.
We like Brooke. Right, Frank?
Good to see you all.
All right. See you all.
See you,
everybody.
Great to see everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.